Well, good day and welcome to episode 16, a special edition of not the driving force, but the current force presented by the Louisiana Transportation Research Center. My name is Todd Blunt. I'm joined today by my friend, colleague, and co-host Garrett Wheat.
Good afternoon.
We are thrilled that you've chosen to join us here as we highlight the people and projects moving change forward in Louisiana transportation. For the past 39 years, LTRC has merged the resources of state government and Louisiana universities to identify, develop, and implement new technology to enhance our state's transportation system and beyond. Today, we are wrapping up our three-part series featuring various sections from DOTD's Multimodal Commerce Group. These wonderful folks oversee the operations of Louisiana's non-road transportation infrastructure, including freight and rail, aviation, ports, and as we'll learn all about today, waterways, of which there are just a few in our state. Louisiana's waterways, from the Gulf to our many lakes and extensive river system, are of course critical to the well-being of our state in so many ways. So to learn more about how DOTD manages our waterways to keep things moving safely and efficiently, we're excited to welcome Chris Collins to the podcast today. Chris serves as DOTD's Director of Waterways, very important role, and we're eager to unpack and explore it with him over the next few minutes. Let's step away briefly before we jump into our conversation with Chris. Welcome back to a special edition of The Current Force. Our focus on this episode is waterways, and we're thrilled to have Chris Collins, DOTD's Director of Waterways, with us here as our guest today. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you. Let's begin with a personal introduction. Tell us a little bit about your education and career background, how you found your way into the world of waterways, as well as into your current role as director.
Well, born and raised in Louisiana, Baton Rouge, of course. Went to University High, graduated, went to LSU, moved away to Virgin Islands for a while, worked for my father in the food industry, learned a lot about customer service, came back. Worked for the legislative auditor in the governor's office, finished my MBA in that time, kind of stayed around in state government for a little bit, but then went to New Orleans, worked in hospitals for LSU Medical Center, Ochsner, Katrina hit, moved back, and kind of figured out that I needed something a little bit slower because I had younger kids, and 12, 14-hour days in the hospital wasn't great. For that. So got a job at CPRA, worked there for about 5 years, and then got a job in the marine and rail section at the time. And then we were, of course, renamed. Our whole division, our section was called Marine and Rail, went from Marine and Rail to Ports and Waterways. And so I ended up getting the Waterways director job after Sharon Balfour, who was my previous boss, retired. And of course, open competition for that job, and was lucky enough to get it. So here I am. I've been in this position for about 10 years now.
Okay, awesome. Well, you've definitely seen some different industries, it sounds like.
Yes, I have. Most of it, and again, all of it is really customer service focused. I mean, if you think about it, most everything we do is customer service oriented.
Living in Virgin Islands is pretty unique and interesting.
It is, but when you work 14 to 16 hours a day in the restaurant business, you can be in Iowa. Only on your day off when you kind of go, okay, I'm going to go to the beach today. Yeah.
And you're too tired.
Exactly. Get out until 12 or 1 o'clock and go eat. Next thing you know, a couple hours at the beach, and then you're back on the sofa watching football. So that's about how it was.
Interesting. Okay. So going back to your current role, can you give us an overview of Louisiana's waterways? Obviously, people who live here know a lot, but maybe a little bit of how many square miles, what kinds of waterways, what does DOTD manage, any protected waters?
Well, let's start with, water is not free, particularly water transportation. A lot of people don't look at our waterways as something that needs investing in or needs maintenance or upkeep. You have a lot of recreational boaters that jump in, boom, next thing you know, they're stuck on a sandbar. I wonder how that happened, So there are things that the Army Corps of Engineers performs as part of their duty to keep waterways open, safe. And so they receive funding. And let me clarify, most of the waterways I deal with are all U.S. maintained, federally authorized channels. So the Army Corps of Engineers are in charge of keeping these waterways dredged to maintenance and to width and the depth. And the federal government is charged with funding that operations to maintain these waterways. And as a non-federal sponsor in most of them, which the state of Louisiana, and particularly Department of Transportation, as a non-federal sponsor, we are charged with making sure that the federal government holds up its end of the bargain.
Okay.
And we also contribute in cases where there's a cost share in that funding. So we have several projects where we cost share. There's some where we don't. Operations and maintenance is fully on the federal government. So you're basically talking about your larger rivers, Mississippi River, Calcasieu, Red River, Washita River, and then some smaller channels, but they are maintained by the Corps of Engineers. So it's the Houma Navigation Canal, the Acadiana, the Gulf of Mexico Access Channel. And those are very vital because of shipbuilding and building modules for offshore oil platforms and that kind of business. So we are focused on keeping navigation channels open for commerce, which our department, multimodal commerce, specializes on. Yes, our group, I should say. And as far as protected, mostly all of these channels, these waterways are protected basically through federal law and legislation. So you have to have a permit to do anything on any of these waters. You have to go through the federal government for approval. You can use them. Yes, of course, they're free. But the government spends millions of dollars of keeping these waterways open, and that's just in Louisiana. So the cost is federal government spends about just $2 billion on operations and maintenance on just waterways and locks and dams, and it could be a whole lot more.
Wow. Well, 2 episodes ago, in episode 14, we focused on the OMC's ports section specifically. So how is the work you do with waterways both connected to ports and different from the work that they do? How do those things work together?
Yeah, well, to get to a port, you have to have water, right? And so those ports were built on the waterways. Our water was here. New Orleans, of course, founded on the Mississippi River, so the infrastructure was there. And I think that's where people get the idea that water is free because it was already there and nobody had to really pay for it. But in order to use it and to continually use it, it's maintenance and upkeep. So where I'm in line with ports is that I understand that our function is to provide a transportation avenue to get to these ports so they can do their work. 1 in 5 jobs are related to ports and waterways. So we take pride in that it's a driving force for economics. And if you can't, there you go. And if you can't get there, what good is it? What use are you? So, my job is to really be more navigation focused. There are people who have other focuses on water, whether it's conservation or water quality. I'm strictly navigation. So sometimes my focus might overlap somewhere and might conflict with people, but I know what I'm charged to do. Yes. Mm-hmm.
How do Louisiana's waterways contribute positively to the state's economy? We talked a lot about commerce already. Why is it effective waterway management critical to realizing those benefits?
Well, anytime you have a shutdown in any type of commercial transportation lane, let's say on the interstate, same thing with waterways, that's our interstate. And just to give you an idea, so the value of the cargo that's on these waterways, take for instance the Mississippi River, over the last 10 years, if you take the average value of cargo imported, and this is along with COVID, the average is actually about $117 billion in commerce. That's just through the New Orleans district, customs district. So that's daily about $320 million a day. Wow. And that's imports. And exports is about $109 million a year and comes out to right at about $300 million. So anytime there's a shutdown, a closure of the river, we're talking about millions and millions of dollars for every hour. And it affects not just the cost of goods, because that's more time to your destination, it's more fuel, it's the product not getting to the customer, which costs money, and then in the end, it costs the consumer more money. So we are cognizant of keeping our shipping lanes open and viable. Some of them we don't have the width that necessarily. That can be either natural or financial. that we don't have those dimensions. But that's my job, to work on that and to make sure that every channel is fully dredged to its dimensions.
So you compared it to the interstate. Typically, vehicles going to have a lot of traffic, like morning and evening commutes, but it's open 24/7. Obviously, the waters are open 24/7. But do y'all have?
No, the Coast Guard really controls vessel traffic as far as setting up the rules. So the Coast Guard's like the police, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers are like DOTD, basically. So they work hand in hand, but one is in charge of the actual safety and implementation, and the other one's actually in charge of providing safe avenue to transport. And in those situations where vessels and other mariners have to communicate, they use the VTS, the vessel transportation system, where they communicate with each other. And there are all kinds of lights and markers and channel buoys that assist you going through from wherever you're transiting. Mississippi River, we've got basically from Port of Greater Baton Rouge to the Sea Buoy in the Gulf, talking about 250 some odd nautical miles to get from the Port of Greater Baton Rouge out into the Gulf. And along the way, there's different varying heights, depths of the river. And so the Corps is actually in charge of maintaining a minimum depth that everyone's agreed upon. And it was at 45 feet, and recently it's been deep in the 50 feet, up to a mile marker 175.
All right, Chris, so I go down and I look at the river, and I can see there's a lot going on out there, but what am I looking at? What all's happening on these navigational pathways?
So let's say if you're in Baton Rouge and you happen to be walking on the levee, and you look out and you see like a 15 barge tow. You see them 3 by 3 by 3, and you got one push barge pushing those up the river. Well, most likely it's probably some type of soybean or wheat. And in one of those one barge tows, that one barge tow, just to give you an idea of, in that one single 15 barge tow will equal 216 rail cars and 6 automotives, or is equal to 1,050 18-wheelers. So one 15 barge tow that you see out in the Mississippi River is equal to 1,050 semi trucks that are just on. So can you imagine taking all that off the I-10 between Baton Rouge and New Orleans? So just one barge, okay? One barge carries, let's say if it's soybean, one barge carries 58,333 bushels of soybean. Last I checked, a bushel of soybean was going for $10.20. That was like first week of June. So if you multiply that in one barge, that's almost $600,000 worth of soybean. Multiplied by 15, okay, you've got like $7-8 million in soybeans right there. People don't realize soybeans are big money. It can use it for so many different things. So there's a whole lot of valuable cargo, even in agriculture, that we don't realize. And that's why we're providing this as a non-federal sponsor, that we want to make sure that our navigation channels are open, because farmers all from the north of us, whether it's Iowa, Oklahoma, Nebraska, wherever, and they're sending them on their tributaries down the Mississippi River to be exported to other countries. And they come down here and they get them on barges and on tankers and they go out. So when you look at something like that and you start understanding the value of that cargo just by looking at one barge or a 15 barge tow, and know that there's barges all up and down the Mississippi River and there's tankers all up and down there. So if you can just conceptualize that one barge is basically $500,000 or more in just what you would think as a basic cheap farm product is soybean. Then think about all the other stuff like resins and all the petrochemical stuff and all of that. So what we do, we feel is very important in multimodal commerce, and I feel like what I do is very important to facilitate commerce, and more so important that the Soy Transportation Alliance thought it was so important that they gave the state $2 million to help with the deepening of the Mississippi River, because it helps their farmers. And so that was something that I didn't actively seek it, but I kind of went out and asked for it, and he kind of laughed. It's Mike Stinghook, who was executive director of this Transportation Alliance, and I'd seen him at a conference, and I said, hey, I heard you talking about how much money a soybean farmer was going to make. Why don't you help the state of Louisiana out? And he kind of laughed, and I kept doing it for a couple of years, and then he finally came around. People don't realize that the state of Louisiana is responsible for the Mississippi River, really is responsible for the Mississippi River. And we're the only state that their boundaries on both sides of the river. If you go up past Louisiana, there's one state and then there's another state, and they can argue about who has to pay, or they can come to a mutual agreement and pay together. It's all on us for anything when it involves the Mississippi River. So I try to educate people on that when we go to Congress and when we go to conferences. I sit on a couple of national groups, and I let that be known that, hey, everybody should be trying to help out because you all benefit from what we do in Louisiana.
For sure. Well, you mentioned that you're very navigation focused. Can you explain the process of dredging? That's come up a couple of times already. So what is it? How does it work? Why is it so important to the state's waterways?
So because we are at the bottom of the Mississippi River, we get everybody's quote unquote trash. We get all the silt. We get everything that comes down. No one really, there are dredging activities above Baton Rouge, but it's not significant. So when we say dredging, there are actual barges, boats that have mechanical equipment that is submerged into the river, and it either sucks it in and contains it and goes and dumps off the silt somewhere else, or it fluffs it and sends it down the river, or it puts it in a pipe and shoots it somewhere else. So there's a dustpan dredges, cutterhead dredges, and hopper dredges. And these are all, there's not a lot of them, and particularly with our rivers and the depths, there's only so many. So like with hopper dredges, there are only 20 hopper dredges in the U.S. So you're talking about a big ship that's sucking in water and silt, and it's trying to figure out what to keep and what to send out. And so then it keeps all the sediment, and then it takes it out somewhere else and it dumps it off. All right, so it might be a couple of miles downriver, it might be 100 miles downriver. Then you have the dustpan dredges, which will suck in the same material, the water with the sediment in it, and it'll figure out what's what and get rid of the water. But they're actually dust pans. So if you see a pan that are hanging out on the side of the boat, and it shakes it all out, and it gets fluffed and sent back down the river. So basically, they're just trying to disturb it, and to keep it flowing. The idea that the Mississippi River will carry it all the way out, but guess what? It's gonna, someone's gonna fly it. So you're rehandling it. It's not the most efficient method, but it's what the federal government calls the federal standard. So that's cheaper for them. It accomplishes the mission. It's not the best thing, but it kind of gets the trick done. And then you have like cutter heads, which are like a large drill bit on the end, and it goes in and it can cut walls. So when you say a channel, a lot of people think of a channel, you can think of a channelized wall that they're cutting. So the ships, the bottom of the ship's in the draft, and they don't run in anything or run aground. And so there's a actual channel that the Corps engineers set up to dredge, and these dredge companies get these coordinates, and they have to actually dredge in this certain area. And there are pipelines and underwater obstructions that no one was aware of, and it can be very dangerous. It can be hazardous. You can have a lot of shutdowns if you hit a underwater pipe, crude pipe that comes up. There can be a lot of things that can happen. So dredging is very expensive. Just for the Mississippi River, the federal government allocates about $200 million to $220 million to dredge the Mississippi River. About 65 to 75 million of that goes in the crossings, and the crossings are where the river has little switchbacks, and the flow slows down, and so the sediment drops. And so they work in those areas. And then you have further down, you have the cutter heads and the hopper dredges working. And right now, I want to say, I believe we have 5 dredges on the Mississippi River. I want to say 2 dustpans, a cutter head, and 2 hoppers. And so the Mississippi River is a lot of activity for this type of work. And they also build land when they dredge, because some of this is beneficial use. That material goes into a designated area that's permitted by the Corps.
Help build the coast up and keep it from...
Right.
Okay.
So they built in the bird's foot down there. They've used a lot of the beneficial use sediment to rebuild land down there, and it's been very successful.
Awesome. And did you mention a depth?
Well, in certain depths, so the Mississippi River was at 45. We're trying to get to 50. Now, that 5 feet of deepening.
It probably costs more the deeper you go, too. Right?
Well, it's about the same per foot. The thing is that the benefits of it are greater. So if you have a tanker that at 45 feet, every foot they can add commodity. So you're talking about the availability to add millions of dollars extra with the same transportation costs, which lowers the cost of transporting those goods, which hopefully gets passed on to the consumer.
Sure.
So that's the whole reason for deepening, the whole reason for keeping our waterways open. Water is the cheapest form of transportation, and we try to provide that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The rail will come in and they'll undercut and lower their prices to keep their customers. But, water has its very unique customers, resins, grain, fuels, petrochemicals, aggregate. So all of those are usually on water, whether it's in barges or tankers or large ocean-going vessels. So.
Sure. Can you tell us some specific waterway projects that have either recently been completed or are in progress, potentially planned for the future, and how will they impact the state?
Well, the Mississippi River Deepening Project, we're not yet complete yet, but we're a significant completion. This project has been on the board. It's an authorized project, so everything takes an act of Congress. And so to be able to even deepen takes a whole nother act of Congress, and then it has to be funded. And so to get that, this was a $235 million deepening project, and the state is on the hook as a non-federal sponsor for roughly $90 million. So, and we've honored our obligation with the cost share as far as part of the deepening and for part of the pipeline relocation, which is mostly on the state and the pipeline company. So we've already relocated about 8 pipelines. We have a few more to go. We started off just trying to get to above head of passes, which would have been negative mile 22. Okay. So that's out in the Gulf, up to head of passes where the Bird's Foot starts. Mm-hmm. And then it progressed to Port of New Orleans, and then the Port of South Louisiana, which we're currently about mile marker 175. So all the pilot organizations put out their draft recommendations of what ships should be loaded to what depth. And most of them are to 50 feet up to mile marker 175. And so everything else is between mile marker 175 and the Port of Baton Rouge that we're trying to deepen there. And we have so we have some pipelines we need to get out of the way there. So wow. So I'll just add on to that with the Mississippi River. So it's basically started in 2015, and we're still in the middle of it. And hopefully we're looking at 2027, maybe 2028. I don't know. We can do dates and stuff. But another project that we just really got off the ground, which takes act of Congress, is to study the deepening of the Red River. And this would be to facilitate water transportation commerce into Texas. So there's currently not much river as far as commerce on the waterways into Texas, and this would open up a huge market, basically Dallas going into Denton, and which is people are chomping at the bit actually for this to happen. Arkansas has already signed on with Texas and Oklahoma to figure it out on that end. There's also a study going on between the Red River Waterway Commission and the Arkansas Waterway Commission to figure out that piece. And then with us, the Louisiana Department of Transportation and the Red River Waterway Commission, we are non-federal sponsors in the deepening study from Shreveport down to Alexandria, which is basically the start of Red River on up to the last so-called navigation spot in the Red River. So it's very interesting. It's costly. We have a 50-50 cost share with the federal government, and it's moving. But there were 2 acts of Congress needed just to get to this point, and then we'll have about 2 more just before we can get to, hey, can we get this project underway? So maybe 6 acts of Congress, and we'll be good.
Well, thank you so much, Chris, for joining us today, for the really fantastic, important work you're doing to serve the people of our great state through our many waterways. I know I've learned a lot just in the last few minutes. Before we go, we always like to have a little bit of fun with our guests. So we want to do that by asking you a few final lightning round questions. Garrett's going to give you these. Don't think too hard about these, just for fun and to help our listeners get to know you a little bit better. Garrett?
So we understand you like to play rugby.
Yes, been known to.
Virgin Islands rugby, kind of some unique stuff going on. So can you tell us maybe your favorite thing about the sport and shed some light to people who aren't as familiar with it?
Well, the fitness aspect of it, the physicalness of it, the camaraderie of it, it's something that I didn't think I'd still be playing at my advanced age. You find a way, but it's, just to go to practice, you have to be in a certain type of shape. And so I can appreciate that. And I know how I'm feeling by how I feel when I go to practice. And I still go to practice. I coach sometimes. I'm the match secretary, or at least I was up until this past May. Resigned from that position because all of these are non-paying and you just don't have time to deal with a bunch of 20-something-year-olds like they're my kids or something. So, I love the camaraderie of it. And most of us have been together, been around each other since college. There's a lot of us that played at LSU together in the 80s, and so I'm giving away my age. And then, we continue to be around. There's a lot of them in New Orleans, and they're running the high school rugby program over there. And so we're putting out a lot of guys who are playing rugby, so it's good to see.
Wow, so it's going across the state? Too?
Oh, yeah, mostly in New Orleans, South Louisiana. There's some high school teams, and that's the goal, like anything. You want to start academies and start the kids younger and working your way up. A lot of it is resistance to the physicality,
Sure.
But you only tackle as hard as you really can. You're going to put your head in the right spot. You're not just throwing your body at people because you have no protection. So you learn how to tackle, you learn how to get tackled, you learn how to fall. And all those things come natural, but
that's pretty cool.
It is a fast-growing sport. Women are very heavily involved in rugby. If you just saw the Olympics recently, the women's sevens team made a huge splash, and they have some stars now, and so people are kind of paying attention to rugby. So.
Awesome. We also know you like to travel. So can you share your most interesting destination you've been maybe in the past year?
Wow, let's see. In the past year, so yeah, I guess it was in the same year. I went to the Tour de France last year. Yeah,
very cool.
For I guess I already gave away my age, my 60th birthday. So we went to France and set up a whole. I just kind of figured it out. We went to Marseille and Cannes and Nice and Monaco.
Wow.
But I got to see a lot of different things. Got to go to a casino and put on my tuxedo. I carried a tuxedo around Europe for like 2 weeks just to get that one, just to go to the casino in my tuxedo, So I think that was pretty neat. And then just recently went to Dominica. Which was totally different from anywhere. You go from, not civilization, but it's a little bit slower life, not as much electronics and travel by car, walking, and it's a lot of nature, and it was good fun, diving, eating, relaxing. Totally different from France.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
All right, one last bonus question. Who will be the Saints starting quarterback this year?
Ooh.
And what's going to be their schedule, their ratio at the end of the season?
Oh, wow. Let's see. I hadn't really, because baseball just ended, haven't really focused on the Saints as much. Everybody's thinking that the Tyler kid's going to be the quarterback. I think it's going to probably be the worst case scenario, or pick the best of the worst between him and Spencer Rattler. I'm just hoping that they don't embarrass themselves. Like to see 9-8 would be really without a good quarterback.
Well, thanks again, Chris, for your time and for everything you shared with us today. Privileged to have you here telling us more about what you do and why it matters. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll close out the show for today. Well, that's a wrap on episode 16 of The Current Force, presented by the Louisiana Transportation Research Center. It's also the last in our 3-part series with DOTD's Multimodal Commerce Group. I hope you have enjoyed and benefited from this series as much as we have. You can learn more about what's happening at LTRC on a daily basis by visiting us online at ltrc.lsu.edu or on social media through Facebook, X, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We always want to encourage you to like, follow, and subscribe to our channels on each of these platforms. We hope you'll be back with us again for our next episodes. We welcome Sandy Brady, our talented LTRC research librarian. Until then, we are your hosts, Garrett Wheat and Todd Blunt, and we thank you so much again for joining us today. Drive safely out there.